Okay, hello. Welcome to another episode of Tattoo Smart Live. Tonight, I want to give folks a little bit of time to join us before we get into the stream. To kill some time while that happens, I just want to take a moment and ask you to please subscribe to this channel. It really helps us to reach more of the audience that we need to have, and it gives us the incentive to keep making great content like this for you. It's essential to support the creators who are trying to make it here on YouTube, especially the ones who are making great tattoo content. You should go to channels like Tattoo Now, Reinventing the Tattoo, the Fireside Tattoo channel with Jake Meeks. There's a ton of great creators out there, and sometimes when I see the videos that they're putting out and I see the videos that we're putting out, the view counts on some of our videos are just abysmal. And it just tells me that real good creators are not really going to YouTube to get their education, to get their entertainment, and I want to see more of that. I'm tired of seeing weird tattoo videos that are not really made for the professional artist taking up the attention on YouTube and getting all those views. It just kind of kills me sometimes to see what the algorithm loves and what it doesn't love. So enough of my rant. Please hit subscribe and share our videos if you like what we're doing. I'm hearing a little ding from something. I want to try to figure out what it is. Back in here. All right. Sorry about that. We really love to have some weird technical difficulties at the beginnings of our streams. So thanks for putting up with this. But okay, so as I was saying, please hit subscribe. There's a button you can hit to get notifications. It's a bell. Everyone says ring the bell. Ring the bell. Hit subscribe. Be here. Show up. Enjoy us. I want to see you guys in the chat room. I want to see you in the comments after the video is done being live. All right, so I'm fortunate enough to get to observe tonight's guest absolutely crushing it on his illustrative, Japanese, and neo-traditional tattoos because he works at my studio, Ink and Dagger, in Roswell, Georgia. Wes Holland has been tattooing since 2010, the last 3 years or so at my shop. He's the type of artist who cares very deeply about the subject matter and style that he works in, and I'm thrilled that we have him here tonight to share some wisdom about chrysanthemums. Now, there is a short list of flowers that we constantly see showing up in Japanese style tattoos. Flowers like chrysanthemums, peonies, lotus, cherry blossom, to name the most common flowers. There's a reason that these flowers are so iconic and popular and distinct, because they're just plain beautiful. With Tattoo Smart's flash stamp library growing so much this past year, we released a piece set with Wes. In the summer, we had Japanese volume 1 through 4 with a few other artists. It's quickly becoming an incredible resource for learning about the style and experimenting with the compositions. So this week we launched Chrysanthemums Volume 1 by Wes Holland. And you can grab the set now for 3 days only using the code. I'll put it up here on the screen. wesgoeslive is the code. So you can get $5 off of Chrysanthemum Volume 1 if you use the code wesgoeslive. I'm going to bring Wes in here and let him show his newest set. He's also got a great chrysanthemum tutorial that's going to show you how he lays chrysanthemums out. He's got a really awesome formula that he wants to teach you guys. So grab your iPad, grab your Apple Pencil, open up Procreate, and get ready to learn something amazing from Wes. All right, let's bring Wes in. All right, there he is.
Hey, everyone.
Hello, Wes.
What's happening?
Man, just technical difficulties as usual.
Okay.
Looks like everything's working now. You can hear me okay, right?
I can hear you good.
Good, perfect. Cool. All right, so I want to chat about, just real quick, I want to get into the trip that we took together. So as you know, we went to Japan last year. Brittany McCarty, Izzy, and Killian from Ink and Dagger joined us. And so the 5 of us had this mission to go to some gardens, to go to temples and bring our sketchbooks and just draw. And, you know, it was an amazing experience for me. I just want to say that I remember watching you draw on your sketchbook and just being so impressed by your ability to just lay things down quickly and efficiently, you know, where I was kind of struggling trying to get my bearings a little bit. And maybe it was because I was on this tiny little sketchbook and I was using some weird brush pens and all this stuff I was unfamiliar with. But every time I would look at you, it was just fucking perfect. So I don't know, you know, you're welcome. So, you know, maybe tell us a little bit about your fascination with Japanese culture and art. Where does that come from for you?
Like a lot of people, just growing up like in anime. Let me mute my mic on my phone real quick.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You can hear yourself through your phone.
Yeah, I can hear myself a little bit.
No sweat.
Cool. Yeah, like a lot of people grew up like in anime, and then as I got into tattooing, you know, you get into tattooing, you see kind of like the surface level Japanese stuff, and it's really hard to make you see it, hey, that's cool, but you don't make a connection to some of the historical stuff. And getting more into Japanese tattooing and just some of the stories behind it, it's like, oh man, like a lot of the stuff that I was watching as a kid, they pulled these things back then, so that just kind of helped build my love. And then as a person who's an artist and loves visual shit, like the way their approach to art for hundreds of years now is the best in my opinion. So
Yeah,
really
definitely.
inspiring stuff.
So I know that you even started learning a little bit of Japanese. Like, how much Japanese can you speak?
They have a few character sets. I just know the character set that phonetically translates out to English. So you know, I can read some of it, but speaking it is pretty bad. Don't make me do that.
But I feel like you're proud to say like sakura instead of cherry blossom and shishi instead of food dog. What are some of the other terms that you know?
I mean, appropriately for tonight, chrysanthemums would be Kiku. So
Kiku? Okay.
yeah,
Would that be like Kiku?
yeah, Kiku.
Cool.
Peony, the set I did before, that would be Botan. Maple, they kind of a little bit overlooked. The maple leaves, those would be Momiji. I never said it right.
Momiji.
And then
Hebi?
and then
I remember Hebi is snake.
Hebi, a snake.
Yeah.
And a flower that you don't see often in Japanese tattooing, Bihasu, is a lotus. So
okay. Yeah, you don't see lotus as much. But yeah, what do you think are the main flowers for Japanese tattooing? I mentioned them in the intro, but I want to hear it from you.
Be cherry blossom, peony, chrysanthemum, probably in that order. Maple, sometimes people do that, and lotus. But
Yeah.
lotus, I feel like you see those more outside of Japanese tattooing, but those would be the 5, I think.
Yeah.
Plum blossoms are rare.
Plum blossoms.
Like if you're a traditional Japanese
Yeah.
tattooer, you'll see those. Yeah, peaches and stuff like that. Yeah.
Are there any other leaves besides maple leaves that you see? Like I think maybe ginkgo leaves sometimes show up,
Yeah.
or maybe like and then you have those little like moss things that you will see on like a koi or on the rocks.
Yeah.
They look
Pine,
like just little spiky balls.
Yeah,
You got
that's
pine
LB
needles.
pine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be it.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, tonight we're chrysanthemums, and I guess we can also get into peonies too if we have some time. I want to give you the opportunity to show off the newest set, give people a look inside. So we're going to bring your iPad feed over here and see how it looks. All right. Yeah, we can see it. Go ahead and show off the latest set.
All right, yeah. So this is my chrysanthemum set. Let me get to it before I say that. So it's broken down into sections. I'll start with the chrysanthemums first. The chrysanthemums, I have 25 different heads, or the main part of the flower. Pretty much in my head, I kind of break them down in sections based off like the general shape of the tips. So I have like a blunt tip, I have like a pointy tip, a more like curled in on itself tip. And I don't even know how to describe this one, but it'll be more kind of like what you would see in like neo-traditional tattooing, where like the tip is kind of very illustrative in my opinion. So I'll say that, like a more illustrative tip. So let's see.
Can you show us some examples of the different styles?
Yeah, I'll do that. So for starters, this one here will be more of a blunt tip, that style there. And so for each of the 5 styles, there's different angles. Usually the first 2 are going to be kind of like a straight on, kind of like horizontal, look at it like horizontally straight on. Um, the next one will be kind of like a 3/4, like the more common view for when you see chrysanthemums and tattooing generally. And the cool thing about these is like they're kind of filled out, kind of like an aesthetically pleasing shape. But depending on the spot you want to put it in, you can easily kind of go through and erase some of the petals on the perimeter to kind of get it to fit exactly the way you want it to.
Sure.
And then let's
I've got the code up on the screen right now. For 3 days, if you use the code wesgoeslive, you can get the Chrysanthemums Volume 1 set by Wes Holland for $5 off.
cool.
So use the code. All right, keep going.
And then the last view will be more of a kind of like a top-down view, just looking at it from
Right.
the top, on top of it. So
Okay.
yeah, this is the blunt tip.
That's the blunt
These
tip.
are
Okay.
the more pointed ones, starting to get a little bit more stylized as you go along throughout the set. Yeah, so that's how those look. I'll probably say the pointy ones are my favorite, just for the way that I like to draw chrysanthemums. I kind of tend to go through that because with that pointy tip, you can kind of easily convey the shape through that. So when you actually go through the shade, and I'll explain that later on tonight. And this will be more of the chrysanthemum with the tips more curled in, and the curls get looser as it spreads out from the center.
Yeah. That looks more like a realistic version of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'll say that. I'll say that. And then as you go along, this is the one that I was saying, more of like an illustrative tip, like kind of what you would see and really common in kind of like neo-traditional tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I've seen
like
a real shift towards this
just tilted
style
to
over the last few
like
years.
that. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the heads. I got a couple of bulbs of chrysanthemums that haven't opened all the way yet. You can kind of use those either as a base, and then you can just kind of add on more leaves to it. I would kind of use these to kind of fill out a composition. Like I might do a composition with a full chrysanthemum head, and then just use a bulb just to kind of like fill in some dead space instead of just using a leaf. It's a little bit more pleasing to look at.
Right.
If you got the space for that.
Someone's asking, James is asking how many different variances. I guess you mentioned 3.
Mentioned 3. There's 25 different chrysanthemum heads. Within that, they're broken down into 5 different categories. So, and then in those 5 different categories, there's 3 different views of each of the 5 categories, if that makes sense. So,
Cool.
I'll even, let's see. It's not really a close view of what's going on here. But, yeah, you can just scroll through. And then if you're more into the traditional approach to Japanese tattooing, I even got like some traditional kind of kiku ones as well. So
those are more traditional?
Those are kind of how you would see a traditional chrysanthemum. They kind of, at least this top view, kind of mimic like, the emperor seal.
Yeah.
The imperial seal. But
yeah,
that's pretty much how they look. So.
Cool. And you have leaves also, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I got 15 different leaves. They start out pretty simple as well. As it goes along, it kind of mimics like a growth pattern. I think the first 4, I would pair these up with more illustrative chrysanthemums that I mentioned. They're kind of like a simple leaf that's not too crazy. I tend to have like a more illustrative approach to things, so I have leaves that kind of mimic how chrysanthemum leaves actually look. So that's when you start to get into these here. Got a few where some of them are a little bit folded in on themselves as well. That was pretty zoomed in. Then I got I think about 10 different clusters as well, so you can just kind of use these to add on to your composition. And then from there, we get into some pre-made designs as well. So
Yeah, these I'm excited about. This is a fun thing that we did with this one. Just kind of thinking about how, just wanted to show something that's ready to go that people can get some information from or use as flash.
Right. Yeah, if you want to tattoo a chrysanthemum, but you don't really have a pre-made design and last minute thing, you can just go in here and grab one of those, tattoo it.
Sure. Another thing I think a lot of artists don't realize these sets are great for is just showing ideas quickly to your clients. If you've got someone in a consultation and you just want to grab something out of your, Procreate brush sets, just to show them, it can be a combination of a few different stamps, or it could just be one design that, you can show at different sizes just to get a feel for like the scale that they would be comfortable with, or, whatever it is. People are going to respond more to a visual representation in a mock-up than they are to, your kind of like verbal description of what you want to do. It gets clients excited. Have you noticed that to be the case? And
yeah, it's better.
I'm curious if you've ever used your set, end up using your like Peony set or your Chrysanthemum set to show clients what you're going to do at all, or how do you think about that?
The peony set, I do that often. It really comes in handy. Like I have some pre-made chrysanthemum, or not chrysanthemums, cherry blossoms that I'll use really quickly, just to kind of like tap real quick to show how they'll lay out there. And it's just better than I feel like a lot of times we'll quickly scribble and people will just go along with it for the sake of sitting next to you while you're doing it, but it's not really representative of what they're going to get. So having a stamp that is actually the thing you're going to do, maybe not exactly what you're going to tattoo, but clearly an image of something similar that you would tattoo is definitely better. So
sure.
For sure.
All right, so let's go to the last part of the set. I want to show these templates that you have.
Yeah, so I included these templates. They're kind of what I use when I'm laying out chrysanthemums. And I think they're good also for if, maybe you use the set and the set's working great for you, but you kind of want to take things in a different direction. I feel like the tips are a thing that people tend to focus on a lot. So I figured I'd make this chrysanthemum template so you can just get the basic form and then draw your own chrysanthemum in there. So that's how that would work. Are you there? I can't hear you. I can't hear anything you're saying. Let's see.
That's because I muted my mic. I'm back.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I just had to make a quick Instagram post.
Right.
Let's jump, before you get into that, let's look into some of the questions in the chat room. I don't want to miss them. I think there was some good ones. If I back up a little bit, back when we were speaking Japanese, someone had a question about that. Let me see where it's at. I mean, basically, I wanted to know if you had tips on where to go to learn those, Japanese translations for the common tattoo subjects.
I think right now, one of the best resources, one of my favorite people is Horitomo out in San Jose at State of Grace.
Yeah.
He just put out his second Mon Cats book, and I haven't had a chance to completely sit down with it. But in that book, he's breaking down a lot of common themes and kind of getting into a lot of the history. He breaks down like Tabori technique, which, a lot of us will never even use, but it's one of those things that I feel like most tattooers have always been interested in. So yeah, Horitomo, I think his name is Kazuaki Kitamura, but he goes by Horitomo out in San Jose. Check him out. He's a wealth of information on Japanese tattooing. He's got a great book on the Fudo Mio. Yeah.
He's at State of Grace Tattoo in San Jose with Taki.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Good reference. I'm glad we brought that up. And let's see, one more question here is about similar topic. Oh, well, I've just got a whole bunch here. I can't find it. let's look at this one. He says, guys, I'm looking for one that has phoenix and Japanese snakes. I'm working on a huge project and need something along those lines. Is there a way to use this set? So Japanese snakes, we definitely have a lot of. If you look for the set by Elliot Wells, it's going to have some really great snakes in it. It's Japanese, I want to say it's Japanese volume 1. It's got all the snakes in it. We don't have any sets with phoenixes in them right now, so I can't help you there, but we have some phoenixes coming up soon. I hope that the Japanese Volume 1 will help you out with that. And we have another snake set coming up really soon that's going to be incredible. And then we have about to purchase this package, super neat. Danny Derrick, man, I follow your page. Your videos on Tattoo Smart sets help me a lot. Awesome. Yeah, Danny Derrick is a friend of mine, and he's got an awesome YouTube channel for some tattoo content. So go look up Danny's channel and follow that as well.
Dope.
And while we're on the subject of channels, last Monday I ended up joining Jake Meeks on the Reinventing the Tattoo channel. He's been doing Monday morning drawing sessions just live on the Reinventing or Tattoo Now channels. They probably put it on both those channels because they're connected. But Jake's awesome. He's got his own channel that is probably one of the most extensive tattoo education channels there is, and it's worth a follow. It's called the Fireside Tattoo Network, I believe. But yeah, go follow those good channels. Like I was saying earlier, you know, subscribe to our channel, comment on our videos, and share them with people that you think will like them, because we're really trying to get this thing going over here, and it's good to get that feedback. So, you know, seeing the subscriber count go up, it gives me the energy to keep doing this. So yeah, please subscribe and go subscribe to the other good channels because they need it. We need good tattoo content on YouTube. All right, so yeah, Tattoo Television. Yes, Tattoo Television is here. So that is one of the channels that's in the network with Reinventing the Tattoo, Tattoo Now, Tattoo Television. Those guys are awesome. They're putting out a lot of great content. Last week, they also did a live stream on drawing waves with Andre Malcolm. And I sat through that just, you know, all by myself here at home, you know, watching like you guys are, drawing on my iPad, learning how to draw waves from Andre. It was awesome. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Wes is going to dive into his demo and show you how he draws the chrysanthemum. So here we go.
Cool. So yeah, so I included this template. I think it's great if you don't have the time to kind of like sit down and figure out how to draw them, but you know, it's a time saver, and I figured tonight I'll kind of walk y'all through on how I made it. I feel like if you can kind of understand this, I think it'll definitely help you save some time in drawing chrysanthemums and not just relying on the ones I included. So first thing for this is I would use, you can go to the airbrushing category. I really like the hard brush. I think that tool is kind of essential for this technique. So yeah, grab that. I'll go over to the brush size and drop that down to, I don't know, maybe like, let's see, 10% is good. Yeah, 10% will be good. And I'll drop the opacity down to maybe like 15, 20%. See how that works. Yeah. As long as you got some pressure sensitivity, you're good. So most important thing with chrysanthemums, and I think the problem I see a lot, is it feels like people, they start just drawing the chrysanthemum from the petals in the center and just try to wing it with no sort of foundation or no sort of foundation or core drawing. And that's why there's so many wonky looking chrysanthemums out there. So what I would do is just build. You need to start from a base and build off of that. And if you look at the center of a chrysanthemum, it's pretty much like a circle if you look at any pictures of it. So you want to start out with one of those. So just kind of like one of those things they teach you in any kind of how to draw book, like draw a sphere. So yeah, draw one of those real loose. And I usually will make a dot kind of here, and this dot kind of indicates like the angle at which the chrysanthemum is going to sit. So from there, I want to start mapping this circle out and starting to visualize it in 3D using kind of topographical lines. So it's just kind of very light lines that help describe the form to you. And this stuff might seem kind of boring to do up front. It's not the fun thing to do, but it'll definitely help. It's one of those guidelines that you'll continue to follow when you're drawing your chrysanthemum, and kind of help you keep everything where it needs to be. So from there, I'll start with the spiral that starts from this dot that I made. And this spiral that I'm going to draw is pretty much going to map out the different levels of petals in there. So starting from this dot, you bring a line up here to the edge, ride that edge, bring it down like that. And then this line will kind of go back to that edge, and you won't see that because it's receding in distance on the other side of that sphere. So, but that line will come back around and we'll see it there. And that's pretty much it. So from there, you pretty much got your base here. So I'll open the layer palette, tap that with 2 fingers and drop the opacity down just a little bit. Like I want to be able to see it, but what I'm going to draw on top of this, I need to be able to see that more. So drop it down maybe 50%, depending on if your drawing was darker than mine, you might want to drop it a little bit lower. So I'll make a
Hey
new
Wes,
layer
let
for
me
that.
interrupt you. Sorry, just in case anyone missed it, what brush are you actually using right now?
So I go to the airbrushing category on Procreate, and then I use the hard brush.
Okay. And
If
also
you
you
want to
have
turn the
the,
streamline up,
yeah, so you can tap it and turn streamline up. Let me pull this over here. So you can turn streamline up, and that will kind of reduce some of your wobbles. And
yeah.
then
For
hit
everyone, it's
done.
going to be different. For me, I'll raise it up to maybe like 30 to 40%, but everyone's going to be different. You just play around with it to where you're comfortable.
And you have the opacity turned quite low on this right now, don't you? You're using black as your color, but you've got opacity pretty low.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
great. I'm
and
not sure if
I think that'll be
people
based
caught that.
on how dark you drew it initially. Like the darker your sketch was, the more you'll need to adjust the opacity. I dropped my opacity down to 50%. And again, if you don't know how to do that, you tap the layer icon. You go to the layer that has the drawing you want to adjust the opacity. Then with 2 fingers, you touch that layer, and it'll give you a slider here at the top. And yeah, I dropped mine down to like somewhere in the 50 range. Not really important the exact number.
Perfect.
So yeah. So from there, create a new layer on top of that, which I've already done, and then I may bump up the brush size a little bit, maybe to 15. And at this point in the process, the size of your brush is generally going to dictate how wide the chrysanthemum petals are. So if you want kind of a more simplified one, I'd raise that value up to maybe 15%. For me, I always kind of go like a little bit illustrative, a little bit more illustrative. So I'm probably going to do it in the 10-12%.
What size is the paper that you're drawing on right now? Because I think that matters in relation to the size of the brush.
Oh yeah, you're right. I use one of the defaults, and I think I'm doing 11 by 14 at 300 DPI, and
Okay,
that's just
so
one of the standard defaults that they had in there.
so if you're on a more like an 8 by 10 sheet of paper like I am, then you may want to use a slightly smaller brush size than Wes. I mean,
Yeah,
let's
good
see
point.
what yours looks like at 15, Wes.
Yeah, so at 5th, let's make sure I'm at 15. Yeah, I'm at 12. But yeah, that's what I'm getting as far as my stroke size.
Okay, and then I'm at more like, I don't know, maybe it's similar. Yeah, I'm at like 11. So just whatever looks right to your eye, right?
Cool. Yeah, that'll work. So yeah, so we got we got the spiral kind of mapped out on this sphere that we drew, and those initial lines that kind of mapped out the shape of the sphere, you're generally going to use those as a guideline, and those will tell you the direction that you're going to lay your petals on top of the sphere. So from here, I'm going to take that brush, mine is at 12%, whatever your brush set is at, and start in the center. And we're just going to kind of draw petals around this sphere and map that out. So here, and then as you go off to the side of that initial line, all these are going to start to curve a little bit. And they're going to curve along the lines as far as those topographical marks that we made earlier. And when you're doing this, what'll help too is if at the end of your stroke you kind of lighten it up so it kind of fades out with that pen pressure. So you're just mapping it along here. And I'm only doing it from, I'll do this again. I'm only doing it in this section from this spiral that I started, the spiral line that I started here, and then the next one. I'm not going all the way down because we're going to stagger these a little bit. So yeah, just going to kind of go like that and just.
And it helps to
find our
start
way
in the
around
middle
this
and
here.
just do the straight one, right? You always
Yes.
like to start there? Okay.
Yeah, I generally like to start there just because it's kind of easier. Like it just makes more sense to me in my head. So
I'm struggling to get that sort of pin pressure to happen here. But the idea is that you kind of lighten up towards the end of your stroke and it gets lighter.
right, and if you can't do that, another thing you can do is do those strokes really lightly. So excuse me, they're as light as they're going to be. You can still see them and see what's going on, but do them lightly, and then come in and hit what are going to be the tips just another time.
Okay.
So, and a flick of the wrist will kind of help with that pen pressure too. So those are the petals that the back of them are facing us, so we can't see inside of them. We're kind of looking at the back of them. So when I get to this point around the edge of the circle, we're going to start getting to the petals that are going to be curved, where you may see either the side of the petal or a little bit of the inside. So just keep that in mind as you're drawing around it. So for these last two, these lines are just going to follow the surface, that sphere that we drew earlier, like that. And then for the ones that go out here, they're just literally going to be like little marks like that, because you're not going to be able to see that entire petal. You're only going to be able to see the tip of it. And you can kind of come in and do a couple more as well there. So from this point, we're going to start on the next row. And then kind of similar how for the first row, I did one in the middle. For this next row, I'm just going to kind of do that same thing, but just bring it off to the side a little bit so it doesn't completely line up with that first one. That'll be kind of boring if we did that. So just do it off to the side and then just continue following the shape of the sphere all the way around. And again, a light pressure initially is great, and then you just come back on top of that and hit it one more time. And this is our second row of chrysanthemum petals. I'm just going to follow that all the way around. And again, once you get to the edge of the circle that we drew earlier, you're really not going to be able to see the entire petal. So when you get to the edge and you're kind of like right here, all you need to do is just kind of do the tip and then just kind of fade it out. You don't really need to try to go all the way around there. And do that up here as well. Just a tip, fade it out. And then for our third row, for the center, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to come back to the middle. Do that. So pretty much instead of taking the time to draw each individual petal, what you're doing is using the brush to pretty much hint that, oh, this is the entire shape of the petal. And when you go in and clean up your drawing, you can just follow that brush stroke. Hard to describe.
I can see it already. Totally works. How did you develop this idea?
I feel like it's a natural evolution of the way I draw digitally.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of use fat brushes to start out with, just to kind of like rough out my ideas. And as I go further and further, you just refine that drawing. And you just can apply that with chrysanthemums. Like I think the most important thing about drawing, or the easiest way to get better at drawing, is to be able to look at things and break them down to simple shapes. And if you look at any chrysanthemum petal, and compare, if you look at any chrysanthemum petal, they essentially look like single strokes of these types of brushes, just, kind of curved like this. And then if you need to overlap them, you just add more opacity. So it's just a natural progression of how I draw digitally. I don't know how to explain it better than that.
It works great. It's totally different than the way I would normally do it, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
So what's next?
So from here, we have pretty much the center of the chrysanthemum. And now what we're going to do is start working on the petals down the perimeter. Let me erase this stray stroke I did. I'm gonna start going
Let us know in the chat room, guys, if you're actually following along and doing this tutorial with us. I'm curious to know if anyone's out there, and if you have any questions that we can have Wes repeat anything, let us know.
But yeah, if I'm going too fast too, just say something, I'll slow down.
Cool.
Yeah, so for the next row, here is where the petals are going to start to kind of like fall away from that central bloom and start to fill up some of the space around it. So from here, what you kind of do is just start imagining like how they would look coming away from that. And for me, that's generally like the petals won't have this kind of elongated curve to them anymore. They'll start to or this kind of shallow curve, they'll start to get more curly, so like and longer. So what I'll do, I kind of start from the middle here, and this will be like I'll start from the tip of this petal and bring it in towards the bottom. And so that doesn't get lost, I'll darken that tip up just a little bit and fade it out. And then just start doing this as I go around it. And this is our kind of our next layer of chrysanthemum petals. And as the petals come around to the front of the chrysanthemum, you're not going to be able to see like a side view. So you have to imagine how that looks receding. And the easiest way to do that is just more of a shallow, like curve like that. And then now, since we've passed this center line here, we're going to start to go the other way. Do that same thing. Go around like that. And then you're going to want to show some of these in the background. Again, it's not going to be the entire petal. It's just going to be a little bit. Let me just stop it right there.
Like we're getting some comments up on the screen. A lot of people are drawing, but B. Schubin is outside grilling. It's very sad. Well, I hope it's delicious. Nice. Whatever you're making, nice. I hope it's worth it. Following along. Here's a longer one. Here. Robert Kerr says, following here, the larger brush idea is great. My wheels are already turning with what I could do differently now with my early sketches. Awesome.
Yeah, good shit. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways people go about doing their water too. I use this technique for water as well. Like if you look at finger waves, they look like these as well. I just kind of, so I'm not pretty much concerned with the actual shape and the tips of the finger waves. Just kind of quickly do that and clean it up later on. I think the most important thing when it comes to drawing a lot of anything really, I see a lot of people kind of, when they start out, they kind of focus on the end result. You kind of want to focus on building your foundation. You can just kind of clean it up as you go along. But yeah, anyway, so from here, just going to keep adding, do a little bit more in the middle. And these are going to just be a little bit longer. And these petals are starting to kind of drop away from the center bulb. So we're keeping that in mind as well. So as the petals get away from the center bulb, they're starting to, and they're facing us, they're starting to be a little bit more hooked and curved. And then as we go out to the side, they'll start to kind of, that curve will be less pronounced and they'll be more elongated as well.
Wes, can you take a look at what I've done over here and tell me if you think it looks correct?
Yeah, that's looking good. I would just say at the bottom of the petals, you need to bring them more into the bottom of that initial sphere that we did in the start.
Like this outer row or the row before it?
Right.
So
like,
this, okay.
If I lower the opacity to what I've been drawing, the bottom of the tips of all my petals aren't really going much further than that initial sphere that I did. Because they're all going to the bottom of that instead of kind of falling away from that. Huh. And that's still just.
Do you think it looks good at this level, or should I back up another level?
I think that's looking good. I think as we add, we're still going to be adding a little bit more layers. Like we're going to spread them out. So I would just worry about that as we continue going along.
So how about this?
Right. Yeah, that looks
Okay.
good.
And is there any strategy about like how you line up the one row to the next? Do you try to fill the gap in between them, or just what are you thinking at this
Yeah,
point?
you can stagger them like you're doing kind of like you would approach doing scales on a koi or dragon or snake. You can kind of
Hmm.
stagger them a little bit just because I wouldn't get too repetitive like you would see in koi, but I would definitely want to stagger them. I just don't, and we'll worry about this when we start to clean this up. But if you stagger them, it'll prevent the issue of having different rows of petals all kind of like the lines all matching up and looking the same, where it looks like you just drew a bunch of lines and then cut them in half for your leaves. You don't want that. For your
Hmm.
petals, you don't want that. So yeah, from here, especially because I tilted my chrysanthemum like this, what I like to do is kind of keep gravity in mind as well. So on this side, on the right side of the chrysanthemum that I did, the uh, the petals kind of follow closely to the sphere, but on the left side and at the bottom here, I'm going to kind of have them dropping away from it a little bit more dramatically. And I think that kind of add, if you keep that in mind and try to like hint towards that, it'll make your designs a little bit more dynamic. So what I'm going to do is just keep adding those leaves and overlapping previous leaf, like having your tip overlap the previous leaves you did is is good too because it'll kind of help sell dimension later on when you clean it all up. I think this is the stage where you're worried about showing depth and dimension, not later on. And then I'll lightly have the ends of the petals kind of come through here too, so I can imagine that when we clean this up. I don't want to get lost in the weeds when I get to that point.
How many more rows are we doing from here?
I don't have an exact number. I just keep going until like it looks good.
Okay.
So I think where yours is, what I would start doing is kind of having them spread out a little bit more, especially at the bottom.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm starting to do that now. Do you
Yeah,
ever change the brush size, or you just keep it the same for the whole thing?
I keep it the same for the whole thing usually.
All right, so
And
here, this is the area where it starts to get really, really weird. Like, I could imagine kind of doing a straight one, but that seems wrong. So maybe it's about like kind of switching directions at some point.
right at this center line here, this kind of imaginary center line here. Excuse me. Generally, you can kind of see where I've set that up, where they have
Hmm.
like at that point they either decide they're going to go left or right. What you can do is come from the left side and bring one over to the right too, just to kind of switch it up a little bit.
Hmm.
But yeah, it gets a little tricky in there. Another thing you
Sure.
can do too. Let's see.
We got to answer this question that Ben has. Um,
The pen isn't set to any overlay or multiply. The pen is just running as it is. What we did earlier is come over to the left side of the drawing. What are these? The brush settings, and I drop the opacity down very low. Like I think I'm at 10% opacity, and that's why it's looking like that. We can zoom in a little bit. Maybe you can kind of see here. And I feel like when you're looking at someone else do it, what I did might not make sense, but if you're following along or if you're watching this later on and you're applying it and as you're doing it, because you set up the template and you've been following it, you'll be able to follow it as you continue going along. So, but yeah, to answer your question, it's not set to anything. It's the opacity is just very low. That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do a couple of more, and then we'll focus on cleaning this up, and I'll talk about a little bit more things to keep in mind with these. And I feel like as I get to these outer ones, these will be damn near straight for the most part. They won't be as curved. They'll be kind of stretched out. And depending on what your design is, what your layout is, this is a good opportunity to use these extra petals to kind of fill in any empty space. And if you're like me, generally my drawings start to get a little bit larger than I planned, so you can just go in here and reduce this. So you can still keep everything in line. Breaking up a little bit there, Russ.
I'm breaking up? What do you mean, my audio?
Yeah, you were a little bit.
It's okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly now. For peonies, I would say it's a similar method in that I'll start out with, and the question was, do you use a similar method for peonies? For peonies, what is similar is the starting point where I started out with that sphere, just so I can kind of keep the volume in mind. And then from there, I'll just use I'll quickly do that. Like for peonies, I'll do that, but like I'll use like a series of ovals to kind of mimic the way my the peony petals are gonna go. And then depending on the style of peony that I want to do, like from there, you just kind of like clean up the tips a little bit, swag them out a little bit, whatever. But to answer your question, similar method in the sense that I always start out with a sphere, so I'm keeping the volume in mind and thinking that kind of helps you think in 3D instead of just trying to like do what I think messes up a lot of people if you just go in and be like, oh man, I'm gonna draw a peony, so here's my initial leaf, and then here's my second one. You know, like I feel like you can do that, but it's real easy to lose the volume pretty quickly in that method. So just starting out with the under sketch is key. Do that. Russ, we lost audio with you again.
Thanks.
Or at least I did.
Yeah, I had put it on mute to find out that my hand has been lagging quite a bit as I move it across the screen. I don't know if it's better now. I'm just looking at.
How would I?
I don't know. It's okay. Look, these things happen. It's a live stream. We'll just keep going. Everything's fine.
All right. So Jason asked, how would I handle petals falling over on themselves and changing direction? Yeah, that's a good question. At that point, like that's something that I'm keeping in mind when, like, let's see, so in some of these areas, you see, like I've done like an entire stroke for a petal, and then out here, that's the area where what's the best way to put this, where the petals are starting to go around behind the back of the chrysanthemum. So at that point, I'm keeping that in mind at this stage, but I don't think that's important right now. Like we just kind of want to map out the general shape of the chrysanthemum, and then once I get done with this stage and I start cleaning it up, I can kind of like break down how that works, because that's a very good question, and something that is really easy to kind of get lost in, especially once petals are starting to change directions and they're overlapping. It's real easy to get confused there. So yeah, I'm gonna get to that in a few.
Got
So
another question here. Oh, you get to finish. When we let you finish, Wes, you need to answer these questions right now.
Let's see, America. What's up, America? How did I select 2 layers separately and then change the size of them simultaneously? What do you do? So if I want to adjust the size of these together, you open your layers palette and you'll have whatever layer you've been drawing on is going to be the one that's selected at default. And then the other layer you want to adjust, you just drag that over to the right, and it'll be highlighted in blue as well, but just a darker blue. Once you do that, that means that the 2 layers that you did are both selected, and then you go over to whatever you want to do and manipulate it from that point. Good question though.
All right.
Yeah, so let me quickly do this so I can get to cleaning this up. All right, so this will be good enough to move on from. So from this point, that initial drawing of the sphere that we did, it's not really necessary anymore. So you can go ahead and delete that. So from now at this point, I'm going to do the same thing we did last time. Drop the opacity down just a little bit, so we're not too focused on that. And then we're going to create a new layer, and this is where we're going to start to clean things up a little bit. At this point, for cleaning up, whatever brush you tend to use is okay. But I really like sticking with the hard brushes and just dropping the size down, because they're so fat that it forces you to not be concerned with the details. It just kind of forces you to focus on the shapes of things and getting things drawn properly before you start to focus on fancy tricks and making shit look cool or whatever. So yeah. At this point, it's good to select a different contrasting color too. So I'll pick this little green. Let's see how that looks on top of this. Raise the opacity up maybe to like half. Yeah, that'll work. That's cool. All right, so with my document size, again, it's 11 by 14, 300 DPI. I set my brush size the same hard airbrush. I set it down to like 3%.
This is
You can do
good.
whatever you want.
This is going to be what you use for your sketch, right?
Yeah, this is just us kind of cleaning up this really rough drawing right now.
Got it.
Cool. So from this point, go ahead and start to zoom in, and keeping in mind the.
You're welcome, Jason. Sorry. You missed it. Sorry to interrupt, Wes.
Excuse me. No, you can add the burp. Yeah. So. Yeah. So we're gonna start from the kind of that center bulb again and work our way out. And there'll be a lot of erasing and adjusting in this stage, but it's a sketch, so that's fine. I think I'm gonna drop this opacity down a little bit more. Yeah, that's good. So at this point, keeping in mind those initial strokes that we did, we're gonna start to outline our different petals. I'm just gonna kind of do like a very simple blunt tip to the chrysanthemum. And I like to start again along this center line here, because if you think about it 3D, if you think about it in a 3D sense, this center area are going to be the ones that are closer to you, and then the other ones, and since they're closer to you, they're going to overlap the ones that kind of go around to the side. So you kind of want to work from this, whatever angle you drew your chrysanthemum when you started your sketch, you want to work from this visual center out to the edges of it. That way, it just kind of working that way kind of helps you keep the volume in mind, and you have to keep that in mind the whole time you're drawing this, or that's the most essential thing in my opinion, drawing these things. So start from the center one, and again, I'm just literally following those brush strokes we made, and then just adding a little style to the tips, however I want to do that. Just kind of keep that in mind. And as we go along to the side, like the bottoms may overlap, and then we may still see some of the tip. I'm just gonna keep working our way around. And this is that bottom row that we did initially on that start. And it helps too sometimes, like you can just follow like this imaginary line here, but if you stagger it, it'll just add some what do you call it? It'll just add like a little bit of variance to it, just that makes it interesting to look at and makes it not so rigid. So maybe some are at this level, maybe two are at the same level, and then the next level we go a little bit higher, and maybe the bottom doesn't line up, so we just kind of lifted it up a little bit. And then as we get off to the side, you're going to see less and less of the bottom and only see the top. And these petals kind of get into Jason's question about like handling the petals folding over. That's kind of what I was trying to hint at with these kind of quick, short marks here, where you can only see that. That's where the petals are starting to change direction. So at that point, I'm not going to draw the entire petal. I'm only just going to draw like, keeping this in mind, this is the tip, and then maybe some of the actual part of the petal recedes in the distance there. And then when we get here where the petals are now facing us, all we're going to see is just the tip there. And then we're going to do the same thing for the other side too. And again, once we get on that outside, all you're going to be able to see is a tip, and then you can kind of just stagger that a little bit, lift that up a little bit. And that's good enough for our initial row. Give us time to catch up. So now once we got that, and again, say something if I'm going too fast, just ramble. But yeah, so now we're going to go to the second layer that we did. So just going to come in here a little bit, like so.
I think I started with the second layer first. I didn't realize it.
It's all good. You can still catch up. Like I'm going to go out to that. Once I get the center done, I'm going to be going out there anyway, so we can handle that. So.
Okay.
So yeah, so these petals on the inside here, you're not going to be able to see the entire thing, so you can kind of just hint at them like this. And we're just following those initial strokes that we made earlier. I may erase this one a little bit, so I think I want to show a little bit of overlap in there. So I'm going to draw that back just a little bit, figure that out. And then now I'm starting to collide with that, with the outer perimeter of the petals when I'm doing the second layer. So what I'm going to do is just start to bring them down inside a little bit. So now we pretty much got our second layer done. And then for the next one, I don't know if it's easy to see on the video, but I have these kind of 3 strokes that I made earlier. Just going to follow those, and that'll be the inside of the chrysanthemum, and we're pretty much done. Or wait. Yeah. So pretty much done with the inside there. And now I'm gonna start working on the petals that are starting to fall away from the center. Lighten this up a little bit. And then we're just gonna follow this around here. And if you're concerned with this center part, how all the chrysanthemums kind of like meet at this point and it's a little bit boring, what you can just do is kind of do a little oval here. And this is like essentially a chrysanthemum petal that is just completely facing us where you can't really see the majority of what we work with, of how it curls, but we know it's there. And with everything else, it just makes sense. So pretty much just stacking these layers and working our way out.
Danny Derrick says, "Oh, nice. I was always unsure how to finish the center." Yeah, I feel like, are we supposed to see something inside of the center sometimes? Is there like a, like a thin line sort of like thing that happens inside of these? Or is that not correct?
Like, let's see, what's the best way to say this? Like,
Like, I don't know, in your set, do you have any examples of what the center of the flower looks like that's not petal? Like what's underneath the petals in the middle of the flower? I forget the biological scientific term for that.
it'll
Is it
be,
the
I'm assuming
stamen?
like the pistil, stamen,
The
all those
pistil, yeah.
things. I tend to not do them just because like when I'm drawing chrysanthemums, like, or when I'm drawing anything really, like it's real easy to get caught up in drawing and what can look cool while you're drawing, and then when you tattoo, you'll draw something, and when you start tattooing, you're like, damn, I shouldn't have drew this. Like, all right, this is unnecessary. And I
Yeah.
kind of feel like the center of chrysanthemums are like that, where the pistil and the stamen or whatever, I'm not too concerned. I don't think I included it in any of them, honestly. Like, so
Good point. All right. Yeah, we have some more questions here.
let's see. What do I? Robert Kerr says, "What do you keep in mind when deciding which petals overlap others?" Good question. Again, man. Let's see. Like, generally, I'm working from the inside to the outer, so I would say the outer petals are going to overlap the central petals, and it can get a little confusing while you're drawing. But you can always, like, even here, like this row here is the one that I drew first, and then when I started drawing the next row, it overlapped the first row that I drew. That's fine. This is a sketch, so you would just come in and just erase that. Um, just keep that in mind. Outside of that, um, another thing. So you're keeping in mind the center of the chrysanthemum, which is around about here, and then the different rows of petals as they come out towards the center. So you keeping that in mind. Center, the outer petals overlap the ones that go as they go towards the center. You keep that in mind. And then again, we're working our way. This is the foreground here. This is the front foreground, if I can spell foreground. And then we're just going to work our way around towards the back of the chrysanthemum. So the petals in the foreground are going to overlap the ones as they go in this direction. You can see it here where this is the petal, the chrysanthemum petal that's directly facing us. Like, in context, we know what it is, but if you do that alone, it just looks like a bean because you can't really see the curvature of it. But as we go off to the side, you see that this one overlapped that one overlapped this one overlapped that one. They'll just continue doing that as they recede in the distance. So you keep in two things in mind: foreground, background, and then the center of the chrysanthemum and the perimeter of it as well. So, and as we're going along here too, another thing I like to do with chrysanthemum petals, it's on all of the ones I did in the set, is I don't think it's necessary to tattoo this line, but I feel like if when you're drawing these, if you keep in mind like what would be the center line of each petal, it'll help you visualize the petal in 3D. And what that means is like, so for this petal, how I said it's facing us and you can't really see it, the center line of that is going to follow the shape and just literally go down the center there. And then as we go off to either the left or right side, that center line, three-dimensionally, is going to move off to the side, but it's going to help describe the shape of whatever we're drawing. So I'm going to do another one like that. And I feel like this is a thing you see a lot in tattooing. And I think a lot of people stylistically add this detail, but they don't really understand why they're doing it. And I feel like that's what this is just kind of helping sell the dimension and keep you thinking in 3 dimensions. And if, just like my set and how it's included in all the drawings, if you do that, even if you don't tattoo the center line, it's not important to tattoo. I think it'll kind of help you when you're figuring out like shade patterns or like interesting ways to color your chrysanthemums. If you can keep that in mind, it'll help you come up with some like interesting ways to color your chrysanthemums that look like you're doing way more than you actually are. And I'm a fan of things that have that result. So let's just keep going around and finishing up these chrysanthemum petals real quick. And then back to John question earlier, as far as like which ones are gonna how do you navigate them overlapping and twisting and changing directions. I think this area is a good point to highlight that. So let me clean up these overlap spots and I'll get into that. So once we get off to this side here, this is where like the chrysanthemums, you're going to start to be able to see the tip of the chrysanthemum curl over on itself, and you're going to be able to see the inside and the side of it. So how I do that is it's kind of indicated here in how like this tip is darker up here and lighter there. So generally follow that shape like we've just been doing this whole time. And if you're going to go with like a blunt tip like I've been doing here, what I would do is just continue that blunt tip, curl it around like that, kind of stop partially, and then bring this line down. And that's how you do that. And then if you want to get more advanced and show like a second ridge, you can do that there, but I don't tend to do that. I think that's unnecessary for chrysanthemums. But yeah, that's how I do it. And generally, I wait to do that until I'm getting on the outside border where it's starting to change into space or whatever, or shift where the inside is starting to face me. It's really hard to describe, but yeah. And you just keep doing that as you go around. And it always helps to draw through things and erase later. If that is going to help you, especially because chrysanthemums is real easy to get confused. Yeah, draw through that petal we just made earlier, and we can just erase it earlier or erase it later like that. That way you know your lines match up instead of guessing at it. And we're going to do the same thing on this other side here. Again, this section is where they start to kind of, they're no longer facing away from us. They're starting to either face sideways or face us. So here I may hint at a little bit of the side, maybe. No, that's too much. So no, I won't hint at it there.
Hey Wes, right here on this piece right here, can you see what I've got there? This and this. Do I take this line here and leave a thin gap all the way through? Like, should I keep that open there? Or would you take that line in and taper it down into this like here?
I wouldn't do that just because like I feel like if you do that, it kind of makes the petal look flat.
So you like the two lines, right?
Yeah, I like the two lines, and maybe what I would do, even at that point, how you did the taper, I would taper the opposite way. So keep it thin when it's going towards the bulb, but when it gets out towards the tip, I maybe fatten it up a little bit. So I'm thinking too, when I'm tattooing that, it's just going to be easier for me to kind of get in there sideways with a mag. Yeah.
Like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good.
And I think that just looks attractive. So. Oh, let me try to answer some. I feel like I missed some questions. So Matthew Johnson said, or Jackson, excuse me. Are there common questions or mistakes to avoid? I think the biggest one, man, is like trying to just go into a chrysanthemum and draw from the center out. Like I feel like you can kind of tell if people don't do an underdrawing with their chrysanthemums because like they're kind of wonky. Like it's easy to kind of lose like the three dimensionality of it. So I would do that, and other common mistakes to avoid. I think that's the main one, really. Um, Outside of that, like if you have like some specific things that trip you up, you can bring it up and I'll answer it. But I feel like in a general sense, not doing a rough sketch and just trying to go straight in and draw a chrysanthemum to me is the biggest mistake. Let's see. Robert Kerr says something that's tricky about mums to me is deciding at what point and angle the petals turn over on themselves, especially the bottom foreground area. Any tips? The main tip too, also is to get a picture of a chrysanthemum and kind of like look at that and not necessarily copy it exactly, but be like, oh, like this is how it looks in nature. Let me figure out a way to kind of stylize that. I feel like if this was like real drawing, or if we were trying to do realism, these petals out here would be coming towards us. And it'd be more of something like this situation. But for the sake of like stylized chrysanthemums, you don't really have to do that. It's just kind of a matter of just thinking in three dimensions. I don't even know how to phrase it outside of that, man. I feel like that's an answer, but it's not a deep answer. I feel like that's the answer I want to give you, but it's not like a quick solution answer, which is what people want to hear. Let's see. How else do I explain that? I think also what you could do, the way I think of chrysanthemums, in the center, I think is really key to kind of follow a pattern a little bit, just because in my head, when you look at a chrysanthemum, the petals on the ones that are stretched out and on the outside are ones that are longer, so they're going to be more affected by gravity because they're so thin too. And those are the ones. So the ones out here are going to be the ones that might like be twisting and turning. So I wouldn't introduce that dynamic until I get into these border ones. I guess that's a good way to answer the question, deciding what point they turn over on themselves. Um, Russ is gone, but I'll keep talking.
I'm
Um,
back. I'm back. Hey,
okay,
I've been drawing over here. How's it look?
I can't see it.
You can't see it? Oh, am I totally gone?
Yeah, it's just black. I can hear your voice though.
Weird. Everything looks right on my end.
All
Damn.
right, well, I'll keep talking
Okay.
until it pops back up. But yeah. So I wouldn't worry about petals kind of twisting and turning until I get onto the perimeter, just because I feel like in my head, where I describe things or think of things, these petals here are not long enough, and they're all bunched together, so they don't have a lot of opportunity to do too much of that. But once they start falling away from that center core, they have the opportunity to do that. Um, yeah, now I can
Okay.
see you,
I
but I
think I'm
can't hear
back.
you. Yeah, yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, so you got it going on good. What I would say is at this point, like a lot of your petals are still focused on kind of curling into the center. And
Hmm.
what I would do is like shrink that, excuse me, shrink that down a little bit and then focus on some more outstretched ones just to kind of, so, because overall the silhouette is just like a circle and you wouldn't want to tattoo that.
Okay. I'll try to add some more then.
Yeah, have some straight ones coming straight out. But yeah, like as far as like the dynamic of them going around, especially the ones that kind of like wrap around the back and are facing us. I think you got it going there.
So now I'm just going to start freehanding some because I don't feel like trying to go back to the
Cool.
That looks good, right? Is that what you're looking for?
You're blurry. I don't know what you're pointing at exactly.
Oh, okay. That's all right.
But yeah, as long as you add just like a couple of petals on the outside, I think it would be good to continue going on. And then up here too, I might do like some ones that are a little bit further outstretched. Just for and then I think another thing too, back to just answering the question of how to imagine things twisting and turning. Another thing to keep in mind too is like I think the shape of the tips of the chrysanthemums you decide to do might affect that as well. So like if you're doing like a blunt tip, you'll have a couple of different like generic shapes that they'll follow, like that for the front ones. And then as they go off to the side, you may have one that's just like a complete side view. And then as they start to go around in space, you'll be able to see the inside there. And as they come towards you, you'll see like that. So, and then if you decide to go with a different tip of shape, you just gotta kind of follow that same thing you set up. So let's see, what's another tip? I like pointing so that, and this will be the side view. And then as it goes off to the side there, I'll do like a kind of a triangular thing there. And then some of the ones where you can only see the top of it, you can't see the whole petal, literally just that. Or depending on more stylized, like the more stylized chrysanthemums I have, like literally just the top there. So that's that. Let me finish this up, and then we start cleaning this up and getting into some ways that you can, some quick ways of coloring it to make it look like you did more than you actually did.
All right. All right, let's see what's in the chat room. Let us know in the chat room, guys, how it's going for you. If you have any questions, I think we're at a good point to get the questions answered before we transition into outlining and coloring. While we're waiting for some messages to come in, Wes, I want to know from you. I know that you've witnessed a lot of the behind the scenes growth of Tattoo Smart over the last couple of years, the last few years that you've been working at the studio.
Right.
Why do you think that artists are so drawn to these projects that we're creating?
I think it's like the dope thing about Tattoo Smart in general is just kind of like a forward thinking approach to something that we as tattooers are all familiar with, which is flash sets.
Yeah.
So as things move closer to just digital only techniques, I feel like if once you start using digital, you see the all the opportunities there, and I think that what Tattoo Smart is offering kind of fills in some of those gaps there as far as like, oh, like instead of taking pictures of flash and trying to quickly manipulate it or Photoshop it to what I want and then redraw it, you have all these tools that you can quickly manipulate. And in a lot of these sets, the line drawings are perfectly clean for you to run a stencil. And I feel like most of us are moving towards digital as a time saver. So if you can then save time as far as like not having to completely outline a whole thing, is people are gonna flock to that, in my opinion.
For sure. So we've had a number of sets by Ink and Dagger artists. We've got a couple of Killian Moon, the Essentials set, which is just like a bunch of base shapes and some simple brushes that you can use. Like Killian likes to construct things rather than to just bring in like a totally finished picture. He just likes to have shapes and structures that he can lay down to kind of help him visualize things. So there's like, you know, cylinders and spheres that are kind of divided with lines inside of them that you can use. We also have the set Great Head from Killian. Have you ever used that, Wes?
No, I haven't, but I feel like if you I feel like drawing faces is kind of hard to keep again, keeping three-dimensionality in mind. So I can
Mm-hmm.
imagine like if you have that set, you just like drop it down, lighten the opacity. I'm sure there's like landmarks for where eyes and the mouth and things go for you to kind of like use as a base, not just like tattoo straight as is, but use as a
Yeah,
base to
yeah.
build on,
I'll show you what it looks like. Let's see if I can find it. So Killian's working on another set right now that's going to be all hands in the same style as Great Head. So the Great Head is based on the Andrew Loomis head proportions, which, if you guys don't know, Andrew Loomis is one of the great illustration instructionists. About a few books that you should read. But Great Head
and
is
Roy Rowlett's comment kind of hints at that as well, like talking about using the how to draw from Disney thing guides when you're younger, like just building a firm foundation before you get caught up in the details.
Right.
Loomis teaches that as well, but yeah, definitely something to keep in mind.
So here's one of the head models from Great Head. Right, so it's got enough structure, and this is, I believe, the I guess this is the male head. It's got a female version as well, and then some proportion diagrams, like this kind of thing. So that's Great Head. Another Ink and Dagger artist, Killian Moon, made that. And then we have the Watch and Compass set from Matt Brumelo, one of everyone's favorite sets.
Crazy.
We released a new version of that a few months back, and he added some things. One of the problems with Procreate brushes is the chain brushes. They just don't really work so great. They come out sort of disconnected.
Right.
And so what we did instead is we just had Matt go through with each of the chains that were in the set and draw them actually using a brush in Clip Studio. Check out my screen. So with Matt's set, all of the chains now are just laid out like this, and it's ready to go. Yeah, instead of having to use a chain brush that doesn't work so well. So anyone who's ever bought that set can go get this this refresh absolutely free. It's just go download the set again, and it will be the new set. Speaking of new sets, your Peony set did a refresh recently too. How many did you add to that?
I think I added 15 new drawings. I did like 3 new peony heads. I think 18 and number 18 and 20 are my favorites right now. Then I added a couple of more leaves, just like I think some very simple leaves. And then I added 10 illustrations that are pretty much like some common tattoo imagery to go along with those peonies as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Hanya right now. It's fucking awesome.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So yeah, like if you want to just tattoo
10
as
of those.
Is, perfect for that.
Here's the Kitsune. Maneko, is it Maneko? Maneko Neki?
Maneki Neko.
Maneki Neko. Lucky Cat.
Lucky Cat. Yeah.
Peony and Shishi. Yeah, these are nice. So yeah, you've added some new stuff, but I mean the Peony Kit, the Peony set here is really kind of the same thing as the Chrysanthemum. Really, it's just peonies.
Right.
You've got the bulbs, the smaller bulbs here. You've got a bunch of different leaves, and some kind of combinations of leaves.
Right.
And Wes didn't make this set, but we have a different set that is a slightly different take on the peony that you might be interested in. It's called the Peony Kit. And I don't know if you've seen this, Wes, but just show you
Nice.
the leaves are a little bit more. Let me get some peonies up here. Yeah, you'll see these are more like the sort of
More
realistic
realistic
peonies.
approach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so for people doing like the black work style or black and gray realistic or more realistic peonies, I think this is another option. Way more
It's a
petals.
time saver because if you're doing it that way, it's hell to outline the thing. So yeah, it's a time saver.
Yeah, there's a bunch in here. This was made by a guy from Ukraine, Andrew Borysiuk.
Cool.
Yeah, just I'm just filling up some of the space while you're working on your drawing, showing some stuff off here. Oh, I want to mention also last week's live stream with BJ Betts. We talked about the Season's Greetings set. And this set is totally free and it's still up on Tattoo Smart now. So if you haven't got this yet, go grab it. It's going to be up for a few more weeks during the holidays. The idea here is we have 20 different designs that are great for holiday cards. So if you're making your own like graphics for your Instagram or making cards for your family, you could even use one of those like print on demand services and upload your artwork that you put on a card.
Oh, that's dope.
And then you could use these as the basis or inspiration, or you can just use them as is. Got a whole bunch of stuff here. We've got even like a super complex one here. Wishing you a joyous holiday season and a most prosperous and healthy new year. And BJ's incredible with this stuff. He probably knocked this out in like a minute and a half with his penmanship brush set. So if you guys missed it, the live stream replay is still up. It's about 2 hours long, and you can watch BJ teach me how to not suck as bad at script lettering. And go grab the set. It's up on Tattoo Smart now for free.
I feel like there was a comment I was going to say something to. I missed it.
Sure.
But, thanks, David. And yeah, Ben Regal, I agree. Clip Studios. That's the shit. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about Clip Studio. I saw a comment I missed earlier. People want to know what's up with the Clip Studio brushes starting to disappear from Tattoo Smart. I'll address that now. You guys don't like Clip Studio for the most part. There's like 10 or 15 people out of all of you that like Clip Studio, and me and Wes are two of them, and Ben's one of them. But we just don't see a lot of people enjoying the Clip Studio stuff that we put out. And just frankly, it was getting a little bit confusing to have so many products, so many different versions of everything. So we just started stopping with the Clip Studio, and yeah, a few of you complained, but for the most part, no one seems to care. So for now, I think it's gonna just be Procreate until we come out with our next big thing, which I can't really talk about too much. But the next big thing with Tattoo Smart is going to mean that you won't really have to choose Procreate or Clip Studio or Photoshop or whatever. You can use anything you want with where we're headed next. So that's all I'll say for now about that.
Cool. So yeah, at this point, I'm kind of ready to start cleaning this up.
Yeah, let's do it.
Get some color on here. Cool. So let's see. Find an inking brush that I like. See how technical pen looks.
Are we going with black here?
Yeah, we're gonna go with black.
Okay.
Cool. So I think technical pen is good. Let's see. Well, it turned out. If you like Streamline, that's good for you. Depending on what level you have it at, that's fine. I'm just gonna adjust mine to work with how I like to draw real quick. All right, so from this point, all we're going to do is just clean up this sketch that we did. And from here, if you want to go with a different type of tip on the ends of your chrysanthemums, you can do that. I will probably end up doing a more like rounded, pointed one, just because I really like that style. But that's kind of up to you. Just as long as like you know what you're going to do and keep that going throughout the whole process. So shit doesn't start to look like you mismatched two different chrysanthemums and some shit. All
Do
right.
you put the center line in at all, or do you just leave that out?
Yeah, at this point I think I'm gonna do that because it'll help with us coloring. But I will say with this center line, if you are going to tattoo it, I would do this with like a very light line. Like even in the set, that line is way lighter than everything else because it's either A, like not necessarily important, or B, intended for you to do either a blood line or, maybe 40% gray, 20% gray line or something like that. So yeah, just gonna start here and just get to outlining. And the good thing about that center line and why it's kind of so important is that center line will kind of act as an edge for light to get caught on and kind of describe how we're going to shade things later on. And if you can help it, make sure you're closing most of your shapes as well. Oh, and also, so whenever I'm drawing with the tool, I generally like to erase with the same tool. And a quick little shortcut for you to do that so you don't have to click your eraser icon and then find the brush you're using. So right now I have, what is this? I have the technical pen selected and I'm drawing with that. And I want to erase with that tool. So what I'm going to do is touch the eraser icon and hold it. And then you'll get a little notification that says it's going to let you erase with the current brush. And then from there, it'll let you do that. You may need to adjust the size, but it'll allow you to erase with the current brush and keep everything moving pretty quickly. And again, make sure you close in your lines. So when we go in and color this, we can quickly select empty fields. Okay, we get into that part where the chrysanthemum petals are starting to curve around. So you're going to see less of the bottom and more of just the top. So that's kind of what that shape is indicating here. And again, with that center line, like I feel like this shape isn't that descriptive, but to me, once I just kind of add this line of the imaginary spine of it, it kind of helps describe which way that chrysanthemum line is moving. And also that center line has the added benefit of making your drawing look way more detailed than it actually is. So
Don't forget, everybody, if you use the code wesgoeslive on Tattoo Smart, you can get $5 off the Chrysanthemum Volume 1 set. That's just for 3 days from this date.
and another thing to avoid too, I just did it absent-mindedly here, is these, I don't want to call it a tangential line, 'cause it's a little different. No, it's tangential line or whatever, where like I have this row of petals here, and this is the main petal, and then I did this center line here, and then when I came for this following row of petals, the main line of that petal literally just goes perfectly with that center line. You don't want to do that. I feel like it'll make things like, I feel like it'll have the what it's probably going to do is trip you up while you're trying to tattoo it, or even worse, while you're trying to outline, or while you're coloring it, and or even worse, try to while you're trying to outline it. So definitely keep a eye out for that. Like it may happen while you're absent-mindedly trying to clean up the sketch that you did, just because the lines of the sketch are so fat. But if you catch it, like, clean it up. Don't do that.
Would you say iPad Pro or iPad Air for illustration? I think that the latest iPad Air is supposed to be just as good as the iPad Pro from like a year ago. So I think that it might be possible to use either or. I think some of the limitations will inevitably be how many layers you can put in a Procreate drawing. So depending on what your iPad can handle, Procreate will start to limit how many layers it will even allow you. And you can see that when you're over here going to set up a new file. When you go to make a custom screen size and you put in a width, let's say, choosing inches here, let's say we put in 20 inches wide by 20 inches tall. So that's a pretty big file at 300 dpi, and Procreate's telling me the most layers I can have is 10. So if I switch that and say, let's do 10 inches by 14 inches, now I can have 38 layers. So right here, as you're making a canvas, you might start to notice a difference between, say, the newest iPad Pro and the iPad Air. And as they go back in time, the layer count gets lower and lower. Maybe you would see some performance issues, something like how the brushes behave. And I think the iPad Pro has maybe a nicer screen, but I don't hear too many people complaining that they have the wrong iPad. If an iPad works with an Apple Pencil, then Procreate works with it, and you can use it. Just keep in mind, how big of a screen do you want, and how much can you afford to spend?
Yeah, that's I think an important thing too is like I feel like everyone I've seen kind of with a smaller iPad that's using it to tattoo and draw their tattoos with always ends up getting a bigger one, because a 12.9, man, like, having a small screen is not fun.
Sure. Hey Wes, we've got about another 20 minutes. Do you think we should just go ahead and get into the coloring part real quick?
Yeah, we can do that. We
Okay.
can do that. So let me close off the bottom of some of these so I can explain that process real quick.
I appreciate you guys hanging out and joining us live tonight. This has been an awesome time for me. I've enjoyed seeing your questions in the chat room, and I've certainly learned a lot from Wes. We are going to keep doing these. We have got a few really exciting ones already lined up. Hopefully within the next, another one, and then somewhere in around Christmas, I actually have to move. I'm getting a new house, so I have to tear down my studio and then take some time to rebuild it. So you might see us go dark on the live streams for a little while around maybe Christmas time towards the beginning of the year. But as soon as I get my studio set back up, we'll be back with more live streams, and I'll be continuing to create some special content here for the channel. Just today I was doing a review video on the Cheyenne Sol Nova Unlimited. That's the battery powered wireless machine that we've been using at the shop, and I'm going to show how it works, let you see an inside look at the machine, and talk about how I like to set it up to keep it sanitary, how I like to break it down after I'm done. I've got some good tips to share on that, so I've got to edit that video, but look for that on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss it. If there's anything that you guys would like a video about, give me some inspiration in the chat room right now. Let me know what you'd like to see me do a video about.
All right, so ready to jump into this color real quick. So first thing you're gonna do is excuse me, once you got your outline all set up, make sure most of your you closing all your gaps or whatever that's important for this style or for this technique, to do it quickly at least. So what you're gonna do is go to your layer palette, the layer that you did your outlines on. You're gonna touch the thumbnail of it, and then you're gonna click reference. And what reference means is whenever from this point on, even though we're going to set up we're going to be working on a new layer from this point on, we're going to rely on the selection tool for this process. And since we said that the line work layer is the reference layer, the selection tool is going to refer to the things in that layer. So that's a mouthful, but it'll make sense as I go through and do it. All right, so again, set a new layer, and that should be underneath your line work. So when you set a new layer, it's going to jump on top. Just touch and hold it, drag it underneath your line work. Make sure you're on that layer. For this chrysanthemum, let's say I'm probably going to go with I'll do it in red. So just pick a nice red. Something not too saturated. And now we're going to go to this S tool, maybe the fourth button from the far left, if that's how you have your screen set up, that S icon. And then you want to make sure at the bottom it's set to automatic. So what I like to do is, so if you did like I did, and you did the center line on each one of your petals, I like to start out by selecting in there. And at this first selection, whenever you select something, is going to be highlighted in blue. And this white part shows how much the selection extends into the lines that you did. Since our lines are pretty thick, what I would say do is touch that blue area and drag to the right a little bit, and it's going to make that white area increase. Depending on how you went about doing it, that white area might increase, and then the entire thing will turn blue. Don't go that far because everything's selected. So dial it back a little bit to where you got this entire shape selected and a little bit of white overlap, and do that in some of these small little the smaller half of the center line that you did. So just gonna run through and do that on a couple real quick so I can illustrate what's going to happen here. So did that on a couple. So from this point, now we're going to go over to our drawing tool, and now this area is going to be selected. So it's only going to have, you're going to see this kind of stripe pattern on everything that's blocked out. So I'm gonna go to my drawing tools. I like this brush in the spit shade called the Magic Spit Shader. I like using that a lot. Um,
Awesome.
so I use
That's the
that.
same brush I chose. I'd already picked
Oh,
it
good
out.
shit, good shit. Yeah, so if you don't have that brush set, definitely get it. And until if you're just working with us tonight, I feel like a soft airbrush will kind of give you the same effect for the most part. So yeah, let me go grab that spit shade brush real quick. Okay, so for this part, I'll put the opacity maybe at 100, make a big brush size, and then just quickly fill the area in real quick. So that's in my head, like that's kind of the shadow side. So you do that. And then now we're going to tap that S again. We're going to kill that selection, and then we're going to set up a new one. So tap it one more time. Make sure it's on automatic down here. And again, it needs to be on add. If you had it on remove, switch it over to add. And then now we're going to tap the main section or the other side of these petals. Let me reduce that. If, for me, what just happened when I chose this one, let me do that again. It selected the entire petal. I don't want that. So what you need to do is, what I can do is touch it, deselect it, touch it again, and then drag to the left, and it'll adjust the threshold. So I can kill that now, and then touch it again, and it should only select that side. That's a mouthful too, but it'll make sense when you actually do it.
Yeah, I left some gaps, even though you warned me not to. I definitely did. And now I'm paying the price.
That happens, and you can adjust the threshold again by dragging left and right, and sometimes it'll kind of pick up the pieces for those gaps you left. It's case by case basis, but yeah. So at this point, I'm not going to do petals that are next to each other. I might do this petal, and I'll do that petal, and I'll do that petal. Just because like I kind of want to do a fade effect in there, and if I select petals that are close to each other, it'll be a little bit harder for me to control. So I selected a couple. Got the I'm back on my drawing or my shading tool or whatever. So that's that Magic Spit Shader from the Spit Shade set. And then I'm gonna come from down here at the bottom, and then just like lower the opacity some, and then just work my way up a little bit. I'll do a smooth fade out like that, and then I'll come in with a smaller brush, and then yeah, that's the pattern that I'll do. So I'm gonna select this one, and I'll do that again. Start out with a big brush, just a general fade from whatever we can see of the base to the tip. Shrink that down, like lower the opacity, and then come in here and do that. And this will just be a little bit more interesting than just kind of filling it in a solid color. And then following this shade pattern too, kind of it gives you the idea that there's like an extra ridge here. And then when we get to that center line is catching light like a highlight. But it's a real simple way of doing that, of conveying those ideas.
Works great. Super fast.
And I think when you're tattooing too, it's an effect to pull off that won't take a lot of time. And when it comes to chrysanthemums, they can be really time consuming. So generally when you're coming up with like shade patterns or shading conventions for them, it's always good to kind of figure out a shade pattern that kind of conveys a lot with a minimal amount of effort.
Man, you're telling me I've made all the wrong choices in that and done like 3 or 4 color blends through each petal.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing too, with the way the selection tool works. So I selected this petal, and then started coloring, but this petal continues behind this one here and goes down there. But I forgot to select that. If you do something like that, you don't have to kill this selection and reselect it again. What you need to do is touch and hold the select tool, and it'll bring back up it'll bring back up the mode where you can choose what you're selecting. That area will turn blue again. I can go back down here and touch the spot that I wanted to. I forgot to do in the past. Then go back to my drawing tool and get back to it. So.
Wes, what do you think about the part of the petal that's facing the inside? I've got a lot of that showing, and you don't. Do you change the color for that, or change the value?
Yeah, like loose rules that I follow is like either if the inside of the petal is going to be light, then the outside is going to be a darker one. This one I would consider the red we chose kind of on the dark side, so the inside of the petal I would do light. And I can
Maybe like
quickly
an orange or a yellow orange or something like that.
And when I say light, when it comes to digital, like when you're tattooing, maybe you would switch over to like some sort of orange, lighter color or whatever. But if we're working digitally, what I would do is just literally, I would lower the opacity of the same color that we're using and just kind of mist it in there.
Okay.
Kind of lightly.
That'll be easier since I did not connect my lines nearly as much as I should.
Yeah. And you could play around with it. Like if you're watching this in the future and you just got all the time in the world, maybe you just want to, you're taking some time to learn how to do this and not necessarily drawing a tattoo that's needs to be ready in a day or two. You can play around with different colors or whatever, but I tend to like simple. It saves time, and I think when you show restraint that way, I think it's like kind of it makes it look like you knew what you're doing a little bit instead of just kind of throwing a bunch of shit at the wall, trying to do a bunch of fancy colors and shit. And then back to that question about the center and whether or not we're gonna do the pistol stamen and all that shit. I'm just gonna select that, and maybe I'll choose a different tone, like a darker red. Fill that shit in and keep it moving. Don't even worry about it. If you wanted to fill it in with the same color, I wouldn't fight you on it.
Hey Wes, I don't want to stop this without talking about leaves for a moment. Can you throw in some leaves from the set just to kind of give some people ideas about how to think about leaves?
Yeah, so let's see, what's the best way to say it? So I'll pull up this. So you can imagine this being our full chrysanthemum. Definitely always, whenever you're making new changes or adding new pieces, when we're working digitally, we have the option to use layers. Use them. Don't forget that shit. So yeah, I'll go back to the chrysanthemum set and just quickly grab one. For this purpose, I'm gonna use kind of a simple one. And generally, like if this is just like a one point tattoo, just one session, I might do like an odd number of them, just for nature's sake. Like you kind of want to go with odd more so than even, generally. So I'll drop one in there.
How big do you think they should be in relation to the flower?
I don't have a formula for that, man. I just kind of feel it out. Let's see. Like I feel like this is a good size to where like it's not necessarily overtaking. Like that's too huge, and then like this is just ridiculously small. So yeah, I don't have a formula for it. I just kind of feel it out, and I think that can kind of boil down to your personal sense, your style too. So
do you like what I have there?
Yeah, that works good too. I think what I try to do too, especially on those outer perimeter, those outer petals, I'll try to adjust it in an area to where like I'm always thinking of what's going to annoy me when I'm tattooing. And if I have those outer petals of the chrysanthemum and they're really close, and then there's like random bits of the leaf between those petals, it's cool when we're working digitally because we're not really drawing it. Or if you're using the set, you're just using the set and you're composing it. But when you're tattooing, that's just gonna be annoying as fuck trying to side turn a mag sideways and just get some shading in there. So I try to keep whenever I'm manipulating things or drawing things or using the set, I try to think of what's gonna annoy me when I'm tattooing and avoid it.
Sure.
So yeah, but you definitely another thing too. You did it in this one, which is good. You definitely don't want to have, or you did it in your example, which is good. I would stay away from having all of my leaves like so far away from the chrysanthemum. Like out here, it just looks awkward. And a thing you can keep in mind, again, like as things recede in distance, there's going to be more overlap. So the ones that are around the top of the chrysanthemum, I'll probably bring those back a little bit, like down here, because the chrysanthemum is
Right.
going to be covering the majority of it. So I'll bring that
Sure.
back there. I'll duplicate that layer, and then for the ones out here, maybe we can see more of that because the petals aren't as dense in this area.
Sure. Now, do you ever
So
use anything like warp to change the leaf around a little bit, like I'm doing here?
no, but that's a dope idea. Like if you feel like these are the leaves that I chose for this example are my more simple ones, and if you feel like they're kind of static and not really dynamic, definitely use that warp tool. Like what you did there is a good little curve to it, just to if you want to flip that and excuse me, like kind of insinuate that that leaf is heavy and it's being pulled down. Definitely
Yeah.
use that warp tool. Like the good thing about digital is you have all these tools to kind of like manipulate. Like, hey, let me try this out, see how that works, and then if you didn't
Definitely.
like it, just undo it and keep it moving.
For sure. Yeah. I love that. Guys, we're going to be wrapping it up soon, right on time. If you have any final questions for Wes, go ahead and throw them in the chat. If you're watching this later, thank you for joining. And sorry you can't see the whole chat room. You might be able to if you log into YouTube, but if you're watching on like your smart TV, you can't see the chat. So we did try to put a few of the questions up on the screen for you, so you would understand what we were talking about. Leave a comment if you're watching this later. Also, leave a comment below, and we'll try to be in there answering them. Let us know what kind of content you'd like to see on the channel. I asked that question earlier. I don't think anyone gave me any ideas, but that's okay. We've got plenty of ideas of our own, so we'll keep bringing you great content either way. But don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. I know I've said it like 80 times, but subscribe to the channel, please. Wes, I really enjoyed this. Tonight has been educational for me. I've certainly learned a ton. I'm excited to keep trying to draw my own chrysanthemums. And yeah, just kind of closing it down
Yeah,
here. So we
good
got some nice
shit. Yeah,
comments coming in. People saying thanks.
Appreciate everyone throwing the questions out there. Definitely asking good questions, the things that you should keep in mind. And yeah, I love this. If you guys have this set and you do a tattoo with it, or if you just kind of do some layouts, just playing around with it, I love to see what y'all come up with. So definitely, if
Yeah.
you post
What
it
is
on
your
Instagram, you can
Instagram?
tag me in it.
Yeah, tag it. It's
I'm Wes
Wes
Holland
Holland.
Tattoo.
Yeah, Wes Holland Tattoo. Mine is at Russ Abbott. Follow at Tattoo Smart. Let's got some questions coming in here.
I'm working
Well,
on an 11 by 14 canvas, and it's at 300 DPI. When you go to like the initial Procreate gallery, that plus sign, I'm literally using the second one. I hope that's default, but yeah, 11 by 14, 300 DPI. That's good too. So when you make something you like digitally, go to cat print and print it out. So
Okay, large scale stencil process and layout. I'm with you on that for sure. Now I have a pretty complicated process, but Corey Ferguson just released the Tattoo Stencil App, and I'm excited to try it because it's supposed to solve that problem for us. So check out Corey's app. He made the app Geometrica too, which is amazing for geometric tattoo design, but he included a stencil feature that is supposed to make it super quick to take your large scale canvas and make it printable. So yeah, check that out. We'll try to get Corey on here soon, show you for himself. Yeah, there it is, Wes Holland Tattoo on Instagram. Thanks guys, this was really dope. You got this. Awesome. Well, I think that we will go ahead and end the stream there. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Wes. See you in the shop soon.
Yeah, see you soon, man. Peace.